The lost treasure of the Knights Templar and pirates buried gold deep underground, and the Vikings sailed there before Columbus, according to legend. However, new evidence suggests that the Romans may have also been on Oak Island. The search for these artifacts was difficult and nearly cost a man his life. One of the biggest mysteries of all is Bole 10X, a deep, dangerous, water-filled shaft that has been the focus of treasure hunters for decades. 80's Dan Blanken's ship is one of Oak Island's most devoted. Because borehole 10X is 235 feet deep and begins with a 181-foot vertical drop through a reinforced steel and concrete shaft, it was not an easy excavation, despite searchers' belief that it could lead to whatever was very deep down. Narrows into a tunnel that is barely 27 inches wide, 44 tons long, and completely obscured by murky water with no light. Two professional divers, Harvey Morash and Michael Gartz, were brought in to investigate 10X by the Lagena brothers. They were aware of the risks but were unprepared for what transpired. Michael would act as a safety diver while Harvey descended, and the crew on the surface would stay in touch through an underwater communication system. However, things started to fall apart a few minutes into the dive with no signal or voice. The team on the surface had no idea if Michael was safe, and they tried to call his name but could not find him. In summary, Oak Island has been a mystery for centuries, with legends suggesting Vikings sailed there before Columbus, the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, and pirates buried gold deep underground. The mysterious Boral 10X remains a mystery, and the Lagena brothers' plan to explore it was not well prepared for the risks involved. The team was in a panic as they were underwater, unable to communicate or find Michael. They tried tapping on the pipe to send signals, but no sign of him. The surface people were tense as they couldn't shoot straight up due to the dangerous decompression stops needed to prevent serious health risks. Everyone exhaled in relief as a light appeared beneath the water's surface. Harvey had descended quite a distance, but conditions worsened inside the tunnel's narrow section, where there was no visibility and thick silt clouds made it impossible to see any objects or shapes. Harvey felt his way around the walls in an attempt to determine what might be beneath them, possibly shattered pebbles, old wooden buildings, and other stuff. The drill bar was a huge 20-ton metal bar that had inadvertently fallen into 10X decades ago, wedged inside the tunnel and obstructing his path. Harvey attempted to work his way around it, but the space was too small, and for a brief moment he wasn't sure he could escape. He had to twist and push himself backwards, scraping against the rough walls, and his breathing became more difficult, but he was able to free himself and begin climbing again. The entire experience demonstrated that 10X was not going to readily divulge its secrets, and they knew they had to change things up because the shaft was unpredictable and dangerous. There were still many mysteries to solve on Oak Island, and they weren't going to allow one setback stop them from moving forward with their plans. When Charles Barkhouse arrived with an artifact, it may completely alter their preconceived notions about Oak Island. After years of secrecy, Charles disclosed that a Roman sword had been unearthed in Mahone Bay, just off the shore of Oak Island, in the 1940s, by a local family who had been illegally scalloping in the region. The Oak Island team had finally obtained the relic. The sword itself was a bronze or brass weapon with a distinctive handle that attracted the team's attention right away. The finding of a Roman sword close to Mahone Bay in North America has generated a lot of speculations and discussions. Some people think it proves that Romans crossed the Atlantic centuries before Norse explorers or Columbus. To verify the sword's authenticity, specialists at St. Mary's University in Halifax performed a chemical analysis, notwithstanding the skeptics' contention that the sword might have been imported to the island later by European collectors or via trade channels. However, the results were inconclusive, because some elements did match Roman metallurgy, such as copper, tin, lead, and arsenic, all of which are consistent with ancient Roman bronze. The team discovered that the sword resembled ceremonial weapons given to gladiators and high-ranking Roman officers, with the hilt featuring Hercules aligning with Roman symbolism. The sword's cast did not adhere to accepted Roman methods, indicating a later era that may have been medieval or early modern. According to some scholars, it may have been built in the 18th or 19th century, using Roman architectural inspirations, or it may have even been purposefully positioned there by someone wishing to heighten the island's mystery. The idea that the Romans had lived on Oak Island was severely undermined when Dr. Christina Bro, a chemistry professor who specializes in metal analysis, performed a more thorough scan and discovered that the sword contained a high amount of zinc, which was not normally used in ancient Roman bronze. This suggests that the sword was made of modern brass rather than ancient bronze. However, not everyone was persuaded, as some noted that some ancient mines contain naturally occurring zinc that could have been converted into Roman bronze through natural processes. A new knowledge of early transatlantic migration and the history of the island of the Oak Island sword has resulted from the team's efforts to determine whether the sword was actually ancient. In the history of the island, discovery has generated debate. While some experts contend that it is a contemporary fake or the result of 19th century craftsmanship, others think that because of its distinctive metal composition at discovery, it may be a real ancient item. For more than 2 centuries, Oak Island has teased history buffs and treasure hunters with various finds that seem to contradict this. For instance, Roman-style crossbow bolts that matched the design of bolts used by the Roman soldiers were discovered on the island. Some contend that they came via trade routes much later in history, maybe during the era of European exploration. Others propose that this could indicate that the Romans or someone with a weapon came to this region of the world much before the Vikings or Columbus. Researchers continue to debate the famous lead cross found at Smith's Cove. One theory suggests it may be even older, possibly dating back to the Roman era, while another links it to the Knights Templar, a mysterious order that allegedly traveled across the Atlantic to hide their treasures. One of the largest debates in the history of the island has been raised by the discovery of the Oak Island sword, which has raised questions about whether the Romans actually lived there. The island is known for presenting items that don't make sense, including what some people claim to be Roman artifacts. The little North American island of Oak Island has been the scene of several archaeological disc finds and discussions. After the cross was examined, the lead composition was linked to southern France, which was formerly a Roman colony. This could indicate that an expedition from antiquity arrived at Oak Island millennia before anybody else did. Researchers have been trying to read the inscriptions on the 90T stone found deep within the money pit for years, and some people think the markings resemble Phoenician or Roman Eros letters. This is another intriguing discovery. The odd stone platforms and roadways discovered beneath Smith's Cove were purposefully constructed by someone rather than existing naturally. Some academics think these structures mimic ancient European engineering and may be related to Roman aqueducts or highways. Another significant controversy arose when a Roman coin was purportedly discovered close to Oak Island, but its precise origin remained unknown. This begs the issue of why an ancient Roman coin would be in the vicinity of Oak Island. Although the enigmatic wreckage at Mahone Bay has not yet been thoroughly investigated, sonar scans indicate that it may be ancient, possibly dating back to the 1400s or earlier, predating Columbus. If there is any evidence linking this wreck to the Romans, it would be revolutionary. But others believe it may be far older and potentially connected to medieval or ancient seafaring fars. Strange discoveries on Oak Island, like wooden platforms and underground tunnels, imply that someone was around for a long period before the official chronology permits. The problem with that theory is that many of these artifacts and structures predate documented colonial history. The sheer number of unexplained artifacts and structures suggests someone was here long ago, whether it was explorers, treasure hunters, or an unidentified civilization history leaving its mark on the island. Skeptics contend that many of these discoveries could be explained by later European travelers or early settlers.